At Williams Park, a small creek, Willow Creek, flows into the Rock River, carrying water and everything that has ended up in the water after draining a watershed of 14,300 acres. Besides pesticides, litter, motor oil, and household chemicals that make their way into the water, each year well over 100 tons of soil is lost into the creek from streambank erosion.
Hi, my name is Vladimir Svetkovic, and I live in Machesney Park. I'm in 7th grade and I go to Harlem Middle School. I live about 3 blocks away from Willow Creek. I wish that all the neighbors and all the people in Machesney Park would take an interest in the creek. It'd be nice if it was cleaned up and made something that people can use more, especially kids. If everybody gets involved, we can make this creek healthier and more beautiful.
Yes, this is about the 5th bridge we've built.
What happened to the other 4 bridges?
Well, the flood came and took the bridge. The last one we had to go down the creek and bring it back.
Oh, yeah. Houses up in there, we flood every year.
Oh.
We haven't this year yet, but last year we had 2 of them.
And how high does the water get along the banks?
Oh, along the banks? It gets out of the banks. It runs over this bridge.
It goes over the bridge, so it goes up your yard, too.
Yes, it goes all the way up. The last flood, it was within about 2-3 feet of our back door.
My lot pin is probably over there on the far bank somewhere.
Oh, not very far on the other bank, or just a little bit?
Well, it has changed so much we don't really know anymore. Oh. I know that's 250 feet and I'm supposed to go 321.
The purpose of this video is to increase community awareness of Willow Creek, to increase understanding of what is going on in the watershed, and to gather support for improving our land and water. You are invited to get involved. Please call for information. Come to public meetings. Volunteer your time and work.
This is the A, B, and C of stream restoration. 99% of stream restoration has nothing to do with streams. It has to do with people. Bringing people around to an understanding of the issues and potential solutions. It's primarily an educational and consensus building process. So anytime you can figure out a way to abbreviate item C and bring people up to an understanding of stream ecology, stream problems, likely future changes in the stream as quickly as possible and as effectively and accurately as possible, then you can jump off to actually implementing and getting things done and saving an enormous amount of time and goodwill.
The Upper Rock River Ecosystem Partnership is a coalition of private landowners, local policymakers, business owners, and all interested citizens who wish to improve the quality of life within the watershed. Machesney Park lies in the Willow Creek watershed. From Rock Cut State Park, the bike path follows the creek as it flows past housing developments, all the way to Harlem High School. From there, Willow Creek continues past homes and apartments, finally joining the Rock River at Williams Park, just north of Machesney Park Mall.
You can see this tributary to Willow Creek. Obviously, its main source of water comes out of these agricultural fields here. And the same with the main branch of Willow Creek that goes up. This portion is agricultural, this portion is residential, and it gets more agricultural as you go east.
I grew up on what is now 173 on a farm along Harvey Road that I would take from 173 back to Willow Creek. And it was kind of a meandering stream that went back and forth across the flat type of land. And it was used, the land was used mainly for pasture for cattle in the summertime. It was also land that was quite wet and soggy.
And what's that land like today, that same spot?
No, that's at the bottom of Pierce Lake right now.
Within Rock Cut State Park, there are 2 recreational lakes created by dams on the creek. Olson Lake and Pierce Lake.
It is my personal opinion that both Olson Lake and Pierce Lake provide some retention capacity during larger storm events, and when you have a large 2 to 4 inch rain event, Olson and Pierce Lakes will raise maybe a foot to 18 inches over their standard pool elevation. Then that's gradually released through the spillway structure. So to some degree it does help the flood situations downstream.
Water leaves Pierce Lake via a spillway, and Willow Creek winds through the woods of Rock Cut until Perryville Road, where houses begin to take over the landscape.
It is almost entirely residential. There obviously is a small area of commercial development around 251 where the creek passes under. I think for the most part, probably our rivers and streams have been maybe not ignored, but maybe not given the attention that they deserved in the past, and certainly any interest in improving the creek, maintaining it by the landowners that live along it is encouraging. And
the Upper Rock River Ecosystem Partnership applied for and received a grant from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources to do a watershed assessment and hydrology study of Willow Creek. This study will provide scientific data to serve as a basis for flood control and conservation efforts.
It's going to take us a while to get stuff completed, and it's just the first step. It's going to take us 18 months to complete the study, basically. It may take another 6 months to a year in order to develop a land use management plan that's going to have some kind of impact. This is not a quick fix. They didn't get to this problem in 1 year or 2 years.
So the Water Conservation District, with us as a co-sponsor, to study Willow Creek, and just simply to begin to get some data on what is the characteristics of the stream in terms of hydrology, the erosion, that sort of stuff, and the water quality. That's one of the reasons for the study, I think, is to begin to try to nail down some of these characteristics and figure out what you can do about it. It's very hard to address a problem if you haven't defined it. And so hopefully the study will define the problems.
If you put on your rubber boots and walk in the water, you begin to understand the problems facing Willow Creek.
A couple major problems. Number one, multiple landowners and everyone doing their own little thing. You have different methods of stabilizing banks. You may have good grass vegetation in some areas. You may have scrub brush in another. You may have piles of concrete, rock riprap, or you may have nothing at all, and so then you have the meandering effect. The other problem you would also have are storm events that seem to be larger and flood events that do more damage than, say, 20, 30 years ago. With the amount of urban growth, the increase in runoff, those two things just escalate the problems, especially in a stream corridor such as Willow Creek, where the soil types are somewhat sandy in nature, and they tend to kind of melt away if you get enough water hitting them.
That stream just that's a floodplain terrace, it's really sort of thick earth, and the stream would just meander and cut into these stream banks.
Streams flood. It's a natural part of the ebb and flow of streams. I think because of the urban development in the watershed has accelerated or exacerbated those peaks in the flooding.
Like I said, since they put in Hart Farms and all those subdivisions east of us, every time we get a 4-inch rain, here we go. That water has no place to go now. It doesn't sink in.
When it rains really hard, all the rain comes shooting off our roof. You can see the water go off the lawn and right down to the creek.
I've seen water coming off of, up here on Hart Farms, where Forest Hills Road is. Last year I was up there when we had that hard rain, and there's water coming out of that subdivision off the bank across Forest Hills Road like a waterfall because of all the blacktop.
But just look in the last 18 months, Perryville Road expansion, for example, it's gone from a semi-wooded forested area to a 4-lane superhighway. And that basically cut a mile, I guess, across the Willow Creek watershed. So it definitely has increased.
What are the solutions? How do we minimize flooding and erosion? How does the watershed return to health? And how can we make the creek beautiful for nature and recreation?
It's too crooked. It needs to be straightened. It needs to be maintained by the Corps of Engineers, just like Love's Parks. I'd like to see it straightened and lined with cement to stop this. You know, I've lost 70 feet of my property.
Stream restoration involves giving streams a chance to create and occupy and maintain the floodplain environment that they historically created. And that might in fact mean removing fill in some places, dechannelizing, taking the straight and narrow streams. Straight and narrow streams like ditches effectively move water from point A to point B, but at point C the water piles up and the flooding problems become real problematic.
In other words, the huge cement ditch in Love's Park adds to the flooding every year downstream at Black Hawk Island, and to some degree even in St. Louis. In Machesney Park, the narrow, straight, backfilled sections of Willow Creek add to flooding problems where the creek tries to fit under a bridge.
Bridges do that. Bridges come down and create a narrow, cemented or rock-lined passage the stream has to go through, and streams normally dissipate energy by wiggling. When they go through the curves, they actually dissipate the energy associated with the gravity's pull on the water.
So, what can we do? What are the best solutions?
First off, you could aim for a good land use management plan in a watershed. Look at areas that from stormwater detention could be intensified to hold back the storm events we are having. Creating wildlife habitat areas in conjunction with stormwater detention basins, or the other thing in the way of stabilizing the creek would be in the critical reaches that are eroding away. Look at putting in the different types of erosion control practices that will stabilize their sections of the creek.
A few years ago on Hall Creek, southwest of Rockford, successful erosion controls were put in place through the efforts of a partnership of private landowners and business working with government agencies. The area is not residential, so the stream restoration was more simple and straightforward than the one facing Machesney Park.
Stream restoration may also involve people living along the stream, doing alternative landscaping in their yards.
If they would just maybe let us put, you know, like some type of a flower or something that would, you know, really dig in, you know, and the roots would hold. Maybe that would hold the banks and stuff.
Deep-rooted grasses, your warm season grasses have deeper roots. Using some of those, doing some more tree planting, shrub planting.
It is getting better because of the trees and shrubs I've got in along here, but
we've got a rain garden here, and the concept is that you, instead of flushing rain down into a storm sewer and getting it to the river as quick as possible with all of its contaminants from the road and from your driveway and your roof, then instead you can funnel that into a depression and use native wetland and prairie plants to infiltrate the water into the ground, so that you're managing the water on your site rather than just flushing it away. It holds the water, and so it soaks it into the ground, so that when it recharges the groundwater. But if you're near a lake or a stream, it'll eventually migrate underground into the lake and stream, but by the time it gets there, it's been purified and filtered through the soil.
And if we can get that to work, that's great. But in some cases, you are having to use traditional lawn grasses, because that's what people have along, you know, in their yard. They're not willing to leave an area look rough. And
the key to success is people working together. Everybody has a part to play. Government professionals, kids and teenagers, business owners, and neighbors along the creek. All can help.
In other words, you don't have to be some high-powered engineer or ecologist or landscape architect to do stream restoration. In fact, it's well within reach of most citizens to begin thinking about and even implementing successfully various stream restoration strategies.
And lastly, getting multiple units of government to agree to work together without feeling, any kind of turf wars or turf battles, and applying for limited money through grants to put the different practices in place.
It'd be really nice to have the bike path go from all the way here to the mall, but it'd be better if we cleaned up the creek first and made it healthier. I wish everybody in Machesney Park would get involved in the creek and make it a beautiful part of our community.